Thank you, Mr. Chair. Your report states that frequent deployments to the southern border are affecting staffing levels at the northern border. This is an important issue to my home state of North Dakota. Businesses rely on customers from both sides of the Canadian-U.S. border. Commerce doesn't stop at 5 p.m. when CBP closes a port of entry. Crops still need to be planted. Substantial detours to operating facilities significantly raise costs. After years of shortened operational hours, CBP finally extended hours at 3 ports of entry in North Dakota on a trial basis. But these hours are only temporary while CBP evaluates vehicular traffic, which does not account for other ramifications, including the transfer of goods and services. Lawful economic access to the United States should not be based on volume. It is the government's basic duty to maintain the northern border. And drawing down at the northern border to beef up the southern border does not justify shutting down North Dakota's economic sector. DHS is not properly allocating resources, and we talk about these things in large dollar amounts, but I'm going to talk about what is actually in the grand scope of things a fairly insignificant one. However, it would be significant at the northern border. One of your reports highlights that ICE spent over $17 million for hotel space and services that largely went unused in 2021. Can you elaborate on how ICE managed to waste $17 million in taxpayer resources?
If you're speaking about the contract that was between DHS and the Endeavors Corporation?
I am.
The contract required a minimum number of beds to be available to ICE during certain periods, and those beds would be paid for regardless of whether a migrant was actually staying in the room, in the hotel room.
Were the beds ever used?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Why was ICE able to use sole source contracting and not award a contract based on an open competitive process?
Because the question that you just asked relates to an ongoing matter, I'm not able to provide more sufficient information in this setting.
Okay. If the company had no experience, why were they awarded the contract over more experienced companies?
Again, Congressman, the same answer as before.
So my next question, there's an ongoing investigation, so hopefully somebody will be held accountable.
Sir.
Would $17 million help at the northern border?
I believe it would help anywhere.
I mean, we don't have the volume that they have on the southern border. Everybody understands that. But we also move a lot of products that a lot of people need. If you like bread, you like what goes on between North Dakota and Canada. If you like, to eat a hamburger, you care about what goes on in North Dakota and Canada. I'm just trying to understand where we end up and how we get to these places that we have these scenarios where we are paying for money. I mean, we've seen people all over the country, many in sanctuary cities, balk and revolt at the fact that we're moving migrants across and moving them out of a high-density area into other places. When we're talking about, do we have any analysis at this point yet of what we're spending on hotel rooms and other facilities while we have $17 million worth of unused beds?
I believe, Congressman, we have an ongoing audit to look at the movement of migrants and what it's costing DHS to do that.
Thank you. I would just say, as we finish this off, that we have to figure out a better way to do this. We have at the same time, the level of frustration from my constituents that exists when we have unfettered access, whether it's ports of entry, whether it's between ports of entry, and the vast majority of illegal activity that is occurring. And at the same time, economic sectors for northern border communities are absolutely being crushed. And it started with COVID, and it started with vaccine mandates, and it finally ended with the United States being the last, essentially, country in the civilized world that lifted those mandates. And these are real-world consequences. And when we talk about trust in government and talk about trust in these issues, when people see fentanyl flowing across the southern border, ports of entry, between ports of entry, we've had that debate 1,000 times, when we see people being released into the interior of the United States with court dates that don't exist for 5, 7, 9 years in advance, and I got a farmer from Grano, North Dakota that can't get across the border after 5 p.m. because we don't have the resources to do it. The frustration is real, and it exists all across the country, and exists as far away from the southern border as you could possibly be, which is North Dakota. Thank you, and I yield back.
Mr. Moskowitz.